Zipper rolls out to the right, pitches off to Taylor, and Taylor's to the 20, down to the 15, down to the 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Billy Taylor scored a touchdown from 21 yards out. The crowd goes berserk. It was November 22nd, 1969. That they came to Barry, Michigan, all dressed in maize and blue. The words were said, the prayers were read, and everybody cried. But when they closed the coffin, there was someone else inside. Oh, they came to Barry, Michigan, but Michigan wasn't dead. And when the game was over, it was someone else instead. 11 Michigan Wolverines put on the gloves of gray, and as the organ played the victors, they laid Woody Hayes away. Under center is Wangler at the 45. He goes back. He's looking for a receiver. He throws downfield to Carter. Who's got it better than us? Nobody!
Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue, and welcome to our visitors edition of the show as we finally get ready for the huge home opener this Saturday. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Now that the season is here, we're on our schedule of 2 shows a week. On today's visitors edition, we'll hear from the radio play-by-play voice of ECU, Jim Szoke. On Thursday's Michigan Game Day show, we'll be joined by the radio voice of the Wolverines, Doug Karsh. In some ways, it seems like the TCU game was just a few weeks ago. In other ways, it seems like we've been waiting forever to get this much-anticipated season underway and get the taste of that loss out of our mouths. We are well aware of the drama surrounding the team now, with Jim's program-imposed suspension and the fact that Sharon Moore will also be suspended for Game 1. Jim will be coaching all week, and we believe the coaching staff and team will be well prepared not only this Saturday, but each week during Jim's absence. ECU coach Mike Houston met with the media today and said his team is ready and excited for the challenge to face the number 2 team in the nation in the Big House.
We're excited about that challenge. The kids were very excited. I mean, you could feel their energy in the team room today. You could feel their energy when we took the field. Now, it was a cooker out there when we first got on the field, so I appreciate the cloud cover kind of knocking it down a few degrees and getting that humidity out of here so we could have a very productive day. But it's always gets more exciting when now you have something to focus on, like the first ball game.
Coach Houston said he thinks this whole situation with Jim Harbaugh is really kind of silly.
I think it's kind of silly, to be honest. I mean, if you want to punish him, figure it out in the offseason. Quit going back and forth like this. So, he's going to coach throughout the week. I don't think it's going to make a significant difference one way or the other on game day. He has a staff that's been with him for a while. His offensive coordinator's been there. A couple of guys on the offensive staff have been there. So, they'll have the game plan and I'm sure do a great job of running it. So, but I just assume he'd be across the field.
My guest today says that even though ECU is a huge underdog, he still thinks they have a puncher's chance on Saturday against Michigan. Joining us next is the radio play-by-play voice of the Pirates, Jim Szoke. So don't go away. Here with us on the show today as we get ready for the big opener on Saturday is the radio play-by-play voice of ECU football, Jim Szoke. Jim, great to have you with us.
Hey, Mike, thanks for having me on.
Well, as I said, we've been waiting a long time to get things rolling, and it's your first day calling the action for ECU football up in the booth. For the last 29 years, you've been a part of the Carolina Panthers radio team, I think it is, so you're going to be a busy guy this fall, aren't you?
Yes, and Charlotte and Greenville are 4 hours apart, so it's a little bit of back and forth, and I also work 3 jobs, honestly. I work a morning show at WBT Radio in Charlotte on top of the Panthers, and now adding ECU, but to get the opportunity to do play-by-play and get to go to places like Michigan, I'm pretty excited about it.
Well, Jim, the Pirates have been gaining momentum under Coach Mike Houston. He's now in his 5th year as head man. He's turned the program around, and it does take time, but especially in the last 2 years, they've been playing some good football, haven't they?
They really have. He inherited teams that were winning 3 games, and his first 2 years he had 3 wins, 4 wins while he was getting his players in place, and then the last 2 years 7 wins and 8 wins, including a bowl victory last year, as you said, heading into his 5th year. So you can see incrementally how he's just steadily building the program here, and recruiting, transfer portal, all that they do. I'm sure we'll talk about. They've lost some talented players that are trying to make NFL rosters right now. But they're a team that, if you get that base going and get a good steady flow of players coming in, they're competitive. So I do think he's done a really good job and caught a lot of people's attention.
Well, let's talk about this Pirates team we'll be seeing in the Big House on Saturday, starting with the offense, Jim. The top skill position players are pretty much all new this year. They lost a lot there. Starting with quarterback Mason Garcia, he has some experience. He's been on the roster 3 years as a backup, but has not played a lot, has he?
Yeah, and that's going to be kind of, the thing with a lot of the players we'll talk about is that they're talented and they're deep, but they don't have game experience, because last year kind of peaked as far as the quarterback and the skill position with a lot of guys that were in their last year. And the quarterback last year was Holton Ahlers, and he's in the camp with the Seattle Seahawks, probably going to latch on as their 3rd quarterback there. So Mason Garcia, pretty highly recruited kid, 7 of 12 passing, 54 yards last year. Didn't play a lot because you had a guy like Holton Ahlers who was in the program for 5 years, who's also the conference's all-time leading passer was Holton Ahlers. So Garcia comes in 6'5", big kid, 250, but also has speed. He can run like a 4.5, 4.6. Pretty highly recruited coming out of Myrtle Beach back in the day. So it's more like, now the opportunity is here. What will he do with that in a game setting? They think he's got all the tools that you'd want as far as just the blueprint of what you would do in the lab, drop to be your quarterback to build off of the arm, the speed, all the stuff that comes with it. But now, how will he process in a game against obviously a really good opponent in Michigan? So we'll begin to find that answer out on Saturday.
Well, Jim, is he a NFL-type quarterback, or does he like to get out of the pocket and roll a lot too?
He can do both. So he can be in the pocket, but I think he'll actually run this quarterback more than they did with Holton Ahlers last year, and things like quarterback draw and things like that, because, again, he's not only 6'5", but he's got pretty good foot speed as well. So, again, not to put him in peril, but I think that, they'll run him at times where it makes sense to run him and do RPO and, zone reads and things like that. So he'll get out there and run it a little bit.
Well, that offensive line in front of him returns, I believe, 2 starters, and they picked up a solid transfer in Avery Jones from North Carolina. But again, like a lot of the other position groups, there will be a lot of new faces up front in the trenches, won't there?
That's probably the one position group where there's the most questions, and some of that's because of some injuries that they're in the moment with, nothing that's going to go, deep into the season. So they probably have got their 5 guys. It's just a matter of what order they'll put them in, and then as guys return to health, what guy's the 6th and 7th guy for depth and things like that. So yeah, they've got some pretty good ones. Hampton Ergel's probably the main one. He could play center or he could play right tackle, and we'll see where he ends up for this first game here. But Parker Moore over at left tackle as well is a guy that a lot of guys have been in the program that have kind of earned the right now to be starters. So may not have been starters previously, but here they are, getting their opportunity now. They bring in Dustin Hall, who was at South Florida out of the transfer portal, and he had a bunch of starts for those guys, I think 25 years overall. And a couple of kids out of Akron that have been brought in here as well, including Owen Murphy, who's dealing with a little bit of an injury right now. So there's some talent there, but again, just a matter of getting them on the field.
Well, Keaton Mitchell racked up over 1,400 yards rushing last year. He's gone. I don't know if this is how you pronounce his name, Rajai Harris,
yep.
Returning at running back. And he missed 5 games with an injury last year, but he's been a very good back in his career, 13 TDs, over 1,400 rushing yards. Is he coming out of camp as the main man in that backfield group?
I think so. He's actually on the Doak Walker watch list, and Played 5 games, as you said, then tore his ACL, but he had 5 touchdowns in those 5 games, ran it pretty well. He's a former conference rookie of the year. And you mentioned Keaton Mitchell. Part of Keaton Mitchell's big numbers was the fact that Rajay Harris went down with the injury. So he was as good as Keaton is, and I think he'll make the Baltimore Ravens team that he's on right now as an undrafted rookie. Rajay Harris was very good and very well thought of. And weirdly, because that was such a cornerstone piece for them, that position group by numbers is going to be a strength, I believe. Marlon Gunn is back from last year. In addition to Rajay Harris, they kind of have a 1-2 combination there. They bring in Gerald Green from Georgia Southern, who's a little bit more of a downhill runner. And the kid they're really excited about is Javius Bond, who's a freshman out of Great Georgia. But he's kind of like Keaton Mitchell. He's one of those electric, can't teach it, kind of quick twitch kind of guy. So I don't know how much you'll see of Javius Bond in this first game, but as the year rolls on, he's well thought of. And believe it or not, a fifth running back, Camaro Edmonds, who's a transfer from North Carolina. So it's a deep, talented running back room. There won't be enough handoffs and passes to get the ball to everybody's hands, but I think they like the fact that if somebody goes down with an injury like happened to Rajay last year, or whatever happens, that's a very deep position group for ECU.
Well, the receiving corps lost 2 1,000-yard guys in Isaiah Winstead and C.J. Johnson, and that is a lot of production. I think it's Jalen Johnson that's back, and big things are expected from him. But who are some of the kids who are making their move in camp at that wide receiver position?
Yeah, Jalen's probably the most proven guy in the former Georgia Bulldog early in his career. Josiah Hatfield is probably the guy that has the next best chance to kind of step up and show what he can do. He's a senior, so he's a fifth-year guy. He's got speed. He can do kick return as well. So only caught 11 balls last year, but over 16 yards per catch. So you see that big play capability is there. But as you said, with 2,000-yard receivers in front of him, really wasn't a lot of opportunity for him. And then a guy like Keelan Robinson, who is another one that, again, comes in from Kansas as a transfer. Jay Sowell comes in from Colorado as a transfer. They've got another one, Jarrett Garner from Duke. So these are all kids in other programs looking for an opportunity here. So those are some of the main ones. And then there's guys that are below that. Brock Spalding is a freshman. Jari Patterson was just one of those coaches' favorites. He was a walk-on who just got his scholarship a couple of weeks ago because of the effort that he's put in. And then at tight end, Shane Calhoun is back, solid guy, part of their bowl team from last year, had 7 starts last season. He's backed up by 2 freshman players, but high hopes for them. But Shane Calhoun will be the main tight end.
Well, for all of us that are football junkies, Michigan fans, ECU fans, we watch a lot of football on ESPN, get to see other teams. I didn't get a chance to see a lot of ECU last year, but when I did watch them, I thought, wow, this is a dynamic offense. They can run, they can throw. The defense struggled, but with so many new faces on this offense, there just have to be more questions than answers right now about what to expect.
Yeah, I think so. There's always uncertainty when you have new players in new roles. I think the coaching staff feels good about what they have. It really is kind of strength in numbers. A lot of times, like you mentioned Keaton Mitchell's numbers or Holton Ahlers, one of the things that Coach Houston has talked about is those are like his only options. So, again, it wasn't bad because they were good football players, but they have options this year. If something happens to Mason Garcia or he doesn't perform well, they've got a kid, Alex Flynn, who's been in the program for 4 years, and he's pre-med student, so a real smart kid who doesn't have maybe all the maybe the high ceiling of a Mason Garcia in terms of the physical attributes. But if they wanted somebody that can just come in and run the offense, throw accurate passes, that you can kind of plug and play him a little bit. They've got depth like that, so I'm not going to run through all the position groups like that. But I think that's why, as coaching staff, they feel like they kind of have depth for the first time in a long season of 12 games, and you're hoping 13 with a bowl game, that they feel like maybe right now they don't know exactly how good some of these players will be in game settings, but they're optimistic that they're going to be able to fill those holes and do things that players in the past have done here.
Well, over on the defensive side, ECU lost a lot of people too, and because they really struggled last year, especially against the pass. 130th, I think it was, in the country, giving up almost 300 yards a game. To say the secondary is the big question mark would probably be fair, wouldn't it?
Yeah, last year some of those guys are gone. Most of those guys are gone, as a matter of fact. And it's kind of like, pick your poison. It was like they were not good against the pass, but they were very good against the run. So the question is, were they that good against the run, or were they that easy to pass on? But I will say, kind of 2 of the stronger players in the entire defense, Julius Wood would probably be the first player out of the 11 to even mention, starting free safety and a 2-year letter winner. Here's 3 all-conference, led the team in tackles last year. So Julius Wood's a good one. He's got size. So he's kind of rangy 6'1", 6'2". And then Tegan Wilk is another one, a junior that's been around for a while. Had 9 starts last season. So the 2 safeties are kind of known and good. And then Shaban Rebel, they've been really high on. He's had probably one of the best off seasons as far as that guy making that leap. So he'll be making his first start in this game at one of the corner positions, but they like him. And then Isaiah Brown Murray, very good player, but undersized, only 5'9", is kind of what they're rolling with as far as the starting four. Probably their number one recruit overall. May not even see the field in this game is Antoine Jackson. He was a 4-star recruit, and actually the Miami Hurricanes had him. Ended up flipping and coming to ECU. Might be the highest ranked recruit they've ever had, but he's only 17 years old now, so doesn't impact what we're talking about for Saturday, but it kind of gives you an idea of where the recruiting is being elevated and the caliber of players that are coming into the program.
Well, if there is a strength on this defense, we mentioned that they did very well against the run last year, so up front was the strength, especially on the edges. Chad Stevens and Jeremy Lewis, they are really good players, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. That front four returns a lot of experience, and Jeremy Lewis is kind of the guy that gets after it as a stand-up rush end. You know, they do his 4-2-5 or 3-4, but when they do the 4 up front, he's kind of stand-up rush end. Chad Stevens, as you mentioned, another guy who's able to get after the quarterback and at least create quarterback pressures, and that's the kind of team they want to be this season, is a team that creates some chaos and gets after it a little bit. And then interior-wise, Deontay Johnson, big guy in there, along with Elijah Morris. These are guys that have lots of starts in this program, and they're backed up by Jason Shupert as part of that. He's the biggest defensive lineman they got, 322 pounds, 6'4". So I think, again, they feel like they've got some depth there. They got some good players. And again, some younger guys that will get better as the season goes on. Just to throw a name out there, Sam Danka, he's 6'6", and he'll be one of the backups to Jeremy Lewis at that stand-up rush end. But he's also got the ability to drop back in coverage and get the arms up and create the passing lane havoc and knock down passes and things like that. So some of this will kind of come as the season goes, but just to kind of give you an idea of what they're looking at heading into the game.
Well, Jim, we always say it's all about the Jimmies and Joes, and for the most part, that's true in every sport. But good coaching and a good staff are so very important too. And at the top, we talked about how well Mike Houston has done as head coach, and I like listening to him and watching his pressers. I've been doing a lot of that this summer. Seems like just a straight shooter. And when you listen to the players interviewed, it seems like they really like him. He gets the most out of his guys, doesn't he?
I think so. I think everyone that I've talked to and encountered, even before I met Mike Houston, because I got the job, and it was a few weeks before I got out to Greenville to the first practice I went to after that, everyone said, you're going to love working with Mike Houston. Just a good human being, first of all. But took James Madison, made them into one of the best at that level of football, and then was at the Citadel prior to that, and both programs was able to take smaller teams and go in and win big games. And so again, this is a whole different thing, taking ECU into Ann Arbor. But when he was at a smaller level, he was used to being David beating Goliath in a couple of cases, and that's how he ends up at a program like ECU. And honestly, if he keeps winning 8 games, he may not be at ECU too long, because he's going to catch some eyes of some bigger programs beyond that as well. But yeah, they're fortunate to have him, and I know he loves being here. And it's kind of a throwback to me, kind of old school in this day of transfer portal and all that. I mean, he really, of course, everybody, and they've done it, bringing transfer portal kids. He really gets kind of the glit in his eye when he talks about kids that have been here 2, 3, 4 years in the program, earning their spot now of this is their moment to be the starter and move up a little bit. So kind of like how college football used to be, where you kind of waited your turn and moved up. I think he's that kind of coach.
Well, Jim, this is the first time Michigan and ECU have met on the gridiron, and I know it's your first year behind the mic for Pirates football, but you're an NFL guy. You've seen a lot of stadiums, experienced a lot. Are you looking forward to calling a game from the Big House?
I am, and we haven't full disclosure yet. I grew up in Ohio, went to Bowling Green State University, but was always an Ohio State fan, still Ohio State fan to this day. So I always called it that school up north and all that good stuff. But I am going to tell you, bucket list to get to go into Ann Arbor, go into Michigan Stadium and see it in person. I did a couple of road trips up to Ann Arbor, because it was close enough to Bowling Green as a student way back in the day, just to see Ann Arbor and get something to eat and drink and look at the stadium from the outside, but never been in for a game. So I really am looking forward to it. I think I've been around, like you said, the NFL. I've been to Lambeau Field. I've been to baseball games at Wrigley and Fenway and all that kind of stuff. But this is definitely a bucket list trip to get to go to the stadium.
Well, and just a couple of weeks after the opener on Saturday, your alma mater, Bowling Green, will be in the Big House.
I tell you what, you guys, then Ohio State, of course, November 25th. I get notes on everybody's calendar as well. So, yeah, I've got 3 games of interest. And you guys will have 3 different head coaches for Michigan football for those 3 different games because, of course, your regular coach will be back, Coach Harbaugh, at the end. And obviously against Bowling Green, the changes continue with you guys and who you're rolling out as far as the assistant coaches going on. But I know they'll be well prepped no matter which coach and who you guys are playing each week.
One of the interesting things about your alma mater, Bowling Green, is the head coach, Scott Loeffler, was a quarterback at Michigan. A lot of his staff, ex-Michigan guys.
So go easy when that week 3 game comes around and not anticipating Bowling Green shocking the planet doing it. Don't think Bowling Green's going to pull an App State on you. ECU's got a better team, so I'm hoping ECU could make some history here. But, we'll just go up there and see what happens, and it's opening day. And as we say, and we've seen, right, anything could happen in college football.
Yeah, we've seen that before. So final question before we let you get away, Jim. From an ECU perspective, playing on the road against Michigan in the Big House, how important is it for the program?
I think it's a very important thing. I think it's a couple of things. One, it's something where, you look at it and it's like, what, a 35, 36-point spread.
Yeah.
But for these kids to have the opportunity to have that puncher's chance to go up there and play, and if you somehow won the game, but if you make it even close in the third and fourth quarter, just what you can gain from that for a season. As you look at the rest of our opponents, there's good opponents there, and ECU's not even picked to win preseason their own conference. So there's going to be tough games, and they're not going to run the table more than likely. But when you begin with Michigan, everything else is going to seem easier. As you mentioned, Jimmy's and Joe's. I mean, you guys are talking about not only playing and trying to win a national championship, but trying to break the Georgia record for NFL players in a draft. That's the kind of Jimmy's and Joe's Michigan's dealing with here. So it's going to be, that kind of challenge will make anything else they do after this seem easier. Not that they're going to roll through the rest of their schedule by any means, but certainly will get the heavy lifting out of the way. It's like NASCAR starts with the Daytona 500, kind of the big race for the year. It's kind of like the big race of the year right out of the gate for ECU.
Well, it all starts on Saturday. It seems like we've been waiting forever to kick off another season, but it's going to be a lot of fun to have ECU in the Big House. And I'd like to thank radio play-by-play voice of ECU football, Jim Szoke, for being with us today. Jim, enjoy your time in the Big House. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Appreciate you having me on, Mike. Thanks so much.
On Quick Hits today, ECU is in rebuild mode, as you heard Jim say, and has a lot of new faces at just about every position group. Coach Houston has recruited well, and they know there are a lot of questions going into Saturday. But he is sure they have talent. It's just a matter of seeing his guys bring it from the practice field to the Big House in a real game. Easier said than done. Still, Michigan is a huge favorite. And the fact is, if you want to win the Big Ten for a third straight year and make a national title run, you have to bury teams like ECU. That is the expectation. We'll find out if that is the reality very soon. You never know until you tee it up for real against another team. Don't forget, we'll be back on Thursday with our Michigan Game Day show. Our guest will be the radio play-by-play voice of our Wolverines, Doug Karsh. Now that the season is here, make sure you follow us on Facebook and Twitter and leave a comment or review wherever you get your podcast from, and we thank you in advance. That does it for now. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Have a great Wolverine week, everyone. Until we meet again on Thursday, take care, and as always, go blue. Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls, at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!